Hello. Hello. Thank you, Father Bochansky. I'm David Niles. This is Adam Minahan. And thank you for the wonderful introduction. We're happy to be here with you today. It was truly a pleasure to get to meet Father Bochansky a couple months ago. He's an excellent priest. A lot of excellent priests here at this conference I have found so far. I am a cradle Catholic. And it was my wife and I celebrated our 5th anniversary yesterday. So thank you. 3 daughters. You may have seen them. We were the ones making noise at Mass today. I have a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 1-year-old. And a couple other things about me. I enjoy a good scotch, medium length walks on the beach. You know, not too long, not too short. Nobody really likes a long walk on the beach. I mean, that's ridiculous. Sand is exhausting. But I also enjoy a good cigar, a pipe every now and then. So just a pretty regular person.
Yeah. Before I introduce myself, I want to make sure that everybody says thank you to everybody who's helping running this conference. A lot of things have to go on to make something like this happen. There's a lot of people behind the scenes that have been working for a really long time to make this thing happen. So let's make sure to be gentlemen, to say thank you and please and say yes ma'am, no ma'am. It's good reminders to make sure that we appreciate those people who are putting this on for us.
Yeah.
But my name is Adam Minahan, and I am married to a beautiful lady named Haley. We actually do have 3 kids, but we actually have 1 more on the way, so we have 4 total. Yes, very excited. Things have been a little chaotic in the Minahan household because we found out it's a boy. And so we have 2 boys, a girl, and another boy on the way. Now, we had 3 girl names ready to go. And we found out that we were having a boy, so things have been a little chaotic because we have not been able to figure out a boy name yet. So if you have a good Catholic boy name for me after this talk, come talk to me because I'd love to take your idea and use it and tell my wife that it was my idea. So
I'm pushing for Moses.
Moses Minahan?
Moses and alliteration, a lot of good things there.
Yeah. So a little bit more about me is I also enjoy a nice whiskey, a nice scotch. I love barbecue. I love bacon, and I love all like briskets, pork. I'm all in. So that's just a little bit about me.
Okay, all right. So
it's very important things about
right.
me.
Yeah, no, yeah. I think so.
Right.
Father Bochansky asked us to speak about authentic friendship. So a couple goals. By the end of our talk, I hope we're going to talk about our own friendship. I'd like to share a little bit about that, about how to deepen the friendships you have, how to tell a good friendship from a bad friendship, and how to start a new friendship. Just what should you look for in someone that you want to share your life with?
David and I's friendship is a little unique because we became friends when we were 5 years old. Since kindergarten, we've been best friends. Here's how it started. As boys, your favorite subject has to be what? Recess. As 5 years old, you're in kindergarten. Recess is your favorite subject. That's what you look forward to. It's like recess, lunch, snacks, and then everything else.
Yeah.
And so we're at recess. We're on the playground, and Hook. The movie Hook, I don't know if you guys remember that movie, but it had recently come out. Peter Pan was kind of a big deal, so that's what we were playing on the playground, Peter Pan. And so I was obviously Peter Pan, and there was Tinkerbells.
What do you mean?
I mean, obviously, out of the 2 of us, I would be the Peter Pan.
Well, I think that's debatable.
Well, history says that I was Peter Pan, and every Peter Pan needs a Rufio. And so Dave was my Rufio. And I remember we were headed out to recess. We were all in lines. The lines were a big deal in kindergarten, getting all the kids in line. We're in line, and Dave was like, "Hey, Adam's been Peter Pan for like 122 days straight. How about I be Peter Pan today?" What'd they say?
Yeah, this is sadly a true story. And I said, I'll be Peter Pan today. And they were like, no. Like, yeah, I know, I'm going to be Peter Pan. And so this is, there's the girls. They were all Tinkerbell. So we have like 10 Tinkerbell. I don't know why we can't have 2 Peter Pans, but obviously that was against the rules. They're like, well, Adam is better at doing this. And this was the convincing argument that persuaded everybody, like, yeah, that's true. I mean, he's just, and I was like, no, he's not. Look, we're talking about imaginary sword fighting here. It doesn't matter how good you are in reality. But anyway, I was so upset about it. I've been sticking around for the last 28 years simply to plot my revenge. And it will be sweet. It will be a sweet day of justice.
But we grew up together. Fast forward a few years, we lived in the same neighborhood. Our parents were best friends. So we had a chance to play hockey in the streets. We swam in the swimming pool and during the summers. We did everything together. We were part of a small faith group, which is really what a small faith group was the adults got together to talk about the faith, and the kids got to eat Rice Krispie treats and play basketball and everything else, which was great for us.
Yeah.
So we grew up together. Our families were part of each other.
Yeah, we got mountain bikes at the same time.
Which was a big deal whenever you were a kid.
Oh, that was a big deal. I remember Adam was like, look how thick the bar is right here on my mountain bike. And I was like, yeah, that's sweet, man. That's a nice
In case
bike.
I wanted to do any jumps.
Like, let's ramp off the curbs and stuff. I mean, really, so we spent a lot of time growing up. And then we went to high school together. And we went to Bishop Kelly in Tulsa. Great Catholic high school. We went to separate colleges, but we weren't too far away, so we would come for the weekend one way or the other. But then more importantly, after college, we both found ourselves in this place where I'm supposed to get a house now. I got this degree. What am I supposed to do? And Adam said, hey, do you want to get a place together? Because I can't really afford all the rent. And I was like, yes.
I realized two things. I needed to pay rent, and I couldn't afford it. So I was like, hey, Dave, you want to come live with me?
I was like, yes. So we found this tiny house on the kind of the trendy side of town.
It's 900 square feet.
Yeah. I think the house was literally 100 years old. It was kind of cool, but also like it was 100 years old. But we could walk to the bar, which we did, like a lot. Like every Tuesday, it was a thing. So when we were living together, eventually something happened. I don't remember whose idea this was, but one of us came up to the other one and said, I have this idea. And it was apparent that this is kind of a crazy idea, but I want to throw it out there and see what you think.
Right.
And whoever it was said, what if we went to church this Sunday? Huh? Like, what about that? And it's like, yeah, that is a crazy idea.
Because we were all, like I said,
Okay.
we were cradle Catholics, and we went to Mass every single Sunday. I don't think the only time I can remember ever missing Mass was it snowed like crazy on Christmas, and my dad tried to get our family into the car and up the hill, and the car started literally sliding backwards, and my mom looked at him and goes, and at our house, when Mom goes, that means no. That means no more. So the first time I missed Mass was the second week of college. That was the very first time I missed Mass. I went the first week, and this is kind of the same story with Dave. I went the first week. I didn't go the second week, and it was tough. I kind of felt a little guilty, but it was so easy to miss Mass the third time. It was so easy.
Yeah. Thinking back, I'm almost surprised that it was easy just to throw away this lifelong habit. I mean, I had never, ever missed Mass in my life. Aside from sort of like Adam, one time we were driving across the country and we showed up where we thought there was a church and it was closed, and this was before the internet, and so we didn't know what else to do. So I just totally gave it away, just this great tradition that I had. And I think part of it, looking back, and this is just part of it, I'm not saying like this other person is responsible for my own choices, but my roommate, who was a friend of mine, he was 1 year older, so he had already been doing the whole college thing for a year. And so my first weekend, I went to Mass, and he said, all right, see you later. And he wasn't going, okay? And so I think that the next Sunday, that kind of was a pressure on me. Not that he was putting pressure on me, saying you shouldn't go, but just the fact that he wasn't going was, it affirmed my decision not to go to Mass, because now he and I were not going together. And so that was kind of an influence on me. The same thing, by contrast, Adam and I now living together and saying, hey, let's go to Mass. Let's start going to Mass on Sunday. It affirmed me and reinforced that decision in my life. And I really think that at my judgment, God and I will look back on my life, and I think that this will be a real turning point in my life. I didn't know it at the time. It's kind of funny that my life could have altered so drastically. It's this huge course correction. And I didn't even notice at the time. It didn't feel like a profound change. But it was this massive, massive influence for the good. That we decided, let's go to Mass on Sunday. And there were some days where I'd wake up and not really want to go, but Adam would already have his collared shirt on, and it's like, all right, fine, I'll get ready, and we would go. But it really was a very dramatic thing.
Yeah, and at that point in time, we had just started listening to Catholic radio. And so we would listen to Catholic Answers a lot. We were living together, so we were kind of like, we were asking each other questions, kind of debating each other. Well, what do you think about this? What do you think about this topic? And we started realizing that we could actually defend our faith, and it was really true. And so we started just like eating into the history of the church and apologetics and why the church believes what it believes. And that was really kind of like Dave said, a really pivotal point in our lives where we started not I'm a Catholic, but I love being Catholic. Catholic is who I am, and that was a huge turning point for us.
Yeah.
So fast forward a couple more years, Dave and I get married. Dave comes over to my house. It's about 8:30 at night. We're hanging out. Dave's phone dings, and he looks at the email, and it's a crazy email. It says, Dave, I have a crazy idea for a radio station, but you have to call me tonight if we're going to pull this off. Jeff. And that's all it said. And Dave looked at me and goes, well, I don't know what he wants, but it's obviously money, and I'm broke, so I'm not going to call him back.
Yeah. I thought, there's no way I'm calling this guy. This is exactly how every phishing email starts, or, it's like, I'm the king of some African country, and I want to give you all this money, but you have to call me now. It's got all the things, big promises, a lot of urgency, and, yeah, this is totally a scam. But Adam made me call him, and I started talking to him, and I had talked to this guy one other time for a couple minutes. So I know who he was, but that was about it. And he starts going into all the stuff that the FCC has this window open. If we apply for this radio station, we can get it, and you can whatever, it'll be yours, and if we don't want it, they'll run it for us, and
it was a whirlwind.
So then I kind of blacked out, and a couple days later, we owned a radio station.
Yeah. It was really crazy because we had to have all the paperwork filled out by midnight that night. Now remember, the email was sent at 8:30, so imagine the bottom of the list that he had to reach out to us and say, okay, well, I just got to try somebody. Who else do I know? We had to be number 20 or 25.
He's told me since that we were literally his last call. If it didn't work because I was the only guy he knew in Tulsa, that he had my email address, and that was it. If I didn't respond, there was going to be no Catholic radio. This go around, at least
in Tulsa.
So
the deadline was at midnight that night. It's 9:30. We have to incorporate ourselves. We have to fill out a bunch of paperwork. This is jargon, legal jargon. We don't even know what we're really signing or reading because it's all legal jargon. We can't understand it.
And technical engineering stuff.
Yeah, which we had no idea
Way
anything about because we have no experience in radio whatsoever. 11:30 happens, and so we're like, okay, well, let's just try to submit it in hopes it goes through. 11:30, the FCC website crashes, and they extend it for another 24 hours. So that gave us enough time to reach out to a lawyer to fill out the paperwork correctly because our paperwork was not correct. Shocker, and fill it out correctly to submit it. Within 9 months, we have a Catholic radio station in Tulsa. Thanks be to God.
Yeah, and for us it was awesome because we're running around I own a radio station. No big deal. I was putting CEO on everything, and I'm the president. All right, so who's Peter Pan now?
Yeah.
So anyway, a couple years later, the radio station's still going, and we were looking at the lineup of shows. We run mostly EWTN content, but there was something we just felt was a weak spot. There was nothing really that was for us, for something that reaching out for millennial men. Well, there's a couple shows really, but it wasn't a main feature of the lineup. And since we own the station, we get to decide what we air and what we don't. So we just said, we'll start our own show, and nobody can tell us we can't run it, because what are they going to do? So we decided to start the Catholic Man Show. And this is mostly Adam's idea. I tried to not do it, and then once again, he convinced me. So we do three things every episode of the Catholic Man Show. The first thing we do is we highlight, review, and enjoy. We open, review, and enjoy a manly beverage. Okay, so we start drinking. That's essentially the first thing we do. And I love telling that. There's not very many old ladies here right now. In fact, I don't see any. But usually when I tell this to people, there's some old lady with like a look of shock and horror that, like, you're drinking on the radio? And it's like, yes, we are. And there's reason for it. It gives us the opportunity to highlight the virtue of temperance and moderation. It's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to do it and exemplify it. It also lets us talk about the value of a good drink and holy leisure. You know, maybe instead of having 4 Bud Lights, have one really good beer. In fact, just don't drink Bud Light at all. Maybe have a good glass of water instead of 4 Bud Lights. In fact, I have to tell this story. So we recorded an episode with Father Bochansky last night, and I just happened to have a bottle of whiskey in my car. So I brought it in. It's unopened, and I said, I don't know, maybe we'll have this on the show, because we usually have a drink. And then he said, yeah, I don't think we're supposed to be drinking in here. I was like, okay, fine, I'll just put this down. Well, after we recorded, I said, oh, there's adoration upstairs. Let me go upstairs. And so I go up and walk in before the Blessed Sacrament, and I kneel down. I've got my laptop over my shoulder, and this bottle of whiskey, I realized, like, I just brought this into adoration. And so I'm trying to, like, I should keep this on the down low, and I kneel down, and my laptop falls off my shoulder and goes boom on the ground. And it's sitting there, and now I'm just sitting there with this bottle of whiskey in my hand, like, I'll just go over here. So anyway, if any of you were there and you were scandalized by some guy walking in with a huge bottle of liquor, I didn't mean anything by it, but
it was unopened.
It was unopened, yeah. So the second thing we do on every episode is we highlight a man gear of some kind. So this is regular dude stuff, maybe a pocket knife or a rosary, a Bible, maybe a flamethrower. We did that one episode. We just talk about the stuff in your garage or the stuff you wish you had, the stuff that you really like. Because if you could say this is a manly thing, well, then there's got to be something about masculinity that is embodied in this thing. And what is it? Why? What makes it manly? And by talking about it and studying it, we come to know a little bit more about our own masculinity. By looking at, well, what is masculinity for? It's for these types of things. So now we know more about who we are. So that is what we do. The second thing. The third thing is we just have a topic. So very often we'll talk about a virtue or just something having to do with the life of a man as a Catholic. But really the show is all about returning the art of virtuous living to the Catholic man, so that bringing the gentleman back into society, the Catholic gentleman. That's really what we want to do and inspire people to, once again, pursue virtue in their own lives.
Yeah, so fast forward to today. Dave and I actually live across the street from each other now. I'm not joking. We actually live across the street from each other. Our kids now get the chance to play together. Because we live across the street from each other, we can record the show. It's really awesome on Sunday night. Dave comes over, we record the show. My wife goes over to his wife's house. They have a Bible study. The kids are asleep. So it gives us an opportunity to have our little ministries together. So it's such a blessing.
Yeah. And now that I have kids, it's become a lot more important to me, and I see the value in giving a good community of other children to my children. I know that I can't 100% control who my children's friends will be throughout their lives, but their friends will have a dramatic impact on the people that they become. And so it just is I just feel so blessed to have the Minahans across the street because our kids are all about the same age and they talk about each other all the time and they're great friends. So that is it's just truly a blessing.
Right.
But when it comes to friendship, not all friendships are the same. Okay, and I think that's kind of an obvious thing. We all know that. We all have our inner circle and then outer circles. You have your people that you're friendly with, but you kind of have trouble remembering their last name or, something like that, down to, I know everything that there is to know about this person. I can finish their sentences. And so these friendships all serve a different purpose. And before we talk about the different types, I want to define friendship. I took debate in high school, and so I know the first thing you do, define your terms. If you don't define your terms, nobody knows what you're talking about. And so when we were writing this talk, friendship was kind of a difficult thing to really put words to. It's just so inherent to the general experience of life that it was kind of hard to define specifically. So we went to what I really think is the source, the ultimate authority of all definitions. Well, close, urbandictionary.com. Urbandictionary.com says that friendship is when you love somebody so much that if you could save their life by never eating pizza again, you would do it, no questions asked.
And that's the kicker. That's got to be the quick kicker, right? No questions asked?
Who's going to do that? I mean, so it's like somebody comes up to me and says, hey, Adam's going to die, but if you never eat pizza again, he'll be fine. And like, wait, why? No, you can't ask any questions. And I would say, like, well, okay, like, if that's what it is, all right, fine. I mean, that's weird, but I'll do it.
If the roles were reversed, though, and it wasn't pizza and it was bacon, listen, pump the brakes. I have some questions. I'm not saying I wouldn't give it up. I'm just saying
Obviously.
I have questions.
Right. I mean, you're not going to give it up just without knowing why. I mean,
right.
That's totally obviously bacon is different.
Right.
In fact,
obviously,
I can imagine if somebody came up to me and they said, hey, you have to give up bacon or Adam's going to die. I would say, well, what's up with that? And they'd be like, no, you can't ask any questions. And I'd be like, no game, no deal. And you would die.
Right.
And then later we would be at your funeral and people would be weeping and sobbing and they'd be like over-exaggerating even the smallest qualities that you had. Like, he was the nicest guy I ever knew. Or he was so young, and they might, whatever they would say. And they'd come up to me and say, all you had to do was give up bacon? That was it? And I'd say, look, he would have wanted it this way. He would have done the same thing for me.
And that's true friendship.
Okay, but there are a lot of people who have talked about friendship. I think C.S. Lewis comes to mind. He said that friendship is when you meet somebody else and you say, no way, you too? Because there's something in them that you think, I thought I was the only one. But now I see myself in you, is kind of what's happening. Cicero was quoted to say that a friend is a second self. So these definitions, what they share is that they're trying to say friendship is a life in common. It's a shared life. And really, Aristotle is kind of he's the man when it comes to friendship. He wrote a lot about it, and even as a pagan, without the benefit of divine revelation, he just came to some very deep, profound truths about who man is and what he's made for. And he said, just generally, that friendship is a life in common where you share goodwill for one another. Okay, he didn't specify it any more than that. Because there's different types of friendship, which we'll get into. But I would say that friendship, for us as a Christian especially, is that when you have a life in common where you will the good of the other. And I think that sounds like a lot like another definition. If you read Thomas Aquinas, he says the definition of love is to will the good of the other. And so I would say that friendship is love in close proximity. Because I can have love for other people far away. I do have love for some people far away, but a friendship there's this element of a common shared life. And that's I think it's an important distinction.
So Aristotle says that there's 3 different types of friendships. So we'll go over those really fast. The first one is friendship of pleasure. I think everybody here can relate to the friendship of pleasure. These are the guys you just enjoy hanging out with. These are your beer drinking buddies, or the guys you go to the coffee shop with, or just the people that you enjoy being around, right?
Yeah. So I think drinking buddy is the best example. Or maybe you have somebody that you just really enjoy conversation. You guys always have a good conversation. I mean, just something that you enjoy their time.
Right. The second one they talk about is the friendship of utility. And this is an example of more like a coworker. You get usefulness out of them. It's like, I need something from you, you need something from me. We've now developed this relationship. Now we have a friendship there.
Yeah. Or I think another good example, just going back to college, is I used to have classes, and maybe I'd meet a guy in class, and we'd hit it off, and hey, I like you, let's study together. Or we would be friends as long as that class went on. If there was a project, maybe we would work on it together. But then when the class was over, we didn't hang out anymore, because our friendship was based on the utility, the benefit that we both got from helping each other do well in the class. If I saw him, it's not like I ignored him. Hey, what's up, man? But we didn't spend any time together. The common life, the life that we were sharing, ceased because the utility ceased.
Right. And both of these types of friendships are good. They're good friendships, but they lack a depth to them. They lack what authentic friendship has. They're easily dissolved, like what Dave said, that once the class is over, I no longer see them. So they're easily dissolved, but authentic friendship is not.
Right.
Authentic friendship is the love for the other for its own sake, for their own sake. So you're no longer trying to be any use. You're not getting anything out of them. You're loving them for their own sake.
Right. So in many ways, the first two friendships of pleasure and utility, have a selfish motive. It's not that you're being selfish, because you do desire the good of the other person, but you desire it ultimately for your own sake. I could think of, I desire the good for you because our relationship is beneficial to me. So ultimately, it's about what I'm getting out of this relationship. Whereas the authentic friendship has nothing to do with me. It's, I desire your good for your sake because I've come to know you, and I desire your own good simply because I love who you are.
And it's interesting that Dave and I's friendship have kind of taken and morphed into all three types of these friendships, where obviously the friendship, the first friendship at recess, I needed your help. We enjoyed playing recess together.
Yeah.
And I was Peter Pan.
For the most part.
For the most part.
Yeah.
The second one, the utility, when Dave and I got out of college, we realized we were both broke. We needed each other to be able to make payment for mortgage. And this third type of friendship is one we constantly are working towards, this authentic friendship.
Yeah, you can't ever achieve, well, I don't know, maybe the Blessed Virgin could have achieved perfect friendship.
I would say yes.
I'd have to think about that. Yeah, it's possible. But I don't think that we're ever going to achieve this authentic, maximum friendship. It's something that you will always work at and always, hopefully, go deeper and deeper and deeper with. But each of them has their own place. We cannot have this authentic friendship with everybody, simply because we don't have the emotional bandwidth to share, okay? You only have so many emotional resources. You only have so much time to give. So we must be selective in who we decide to share our lives with in this deep, intimate way. Like we said, the other friendships, they're not bad. They serve a good purpose to make life enjoyable. They bring beauty to our lives in their own way. But it's the authentic friendship when I know you and you know me. You know who I am and I know who you are, and we have this deep connection. That is what brings true joy to our lives. And so we want to really put our priority on this last type of authentic friendship. The other two have a way of taking care of themselves. The friendships of utility will naturally spring from two people trying to accomplish the same thing, like your coworkers. Friendships of pleasure will also naturally arise. So we don't need to focus on creating those. It's the authentic friendship that we should really invest our time and our resources.
Right, because we're made for communion. That's what we're made for. Especially men. I think it's interesting that men in general, we desire this authentic brotherhood. Women can get put together in a room and they're all instantly best friends. It's crazy. You can watch them and they're all talking and all of a sudden they know everything about all of them. And
Yeah.
it's like, wow, how did you do that? That was amazing. Guys, we're over here talking. We're talking about like theories and how to solve world problems and what I ate yesterday, and things like that.
We got together, a big group of us got together for dinner about a year ago, and we decided, hey, let's let the women sit down there, and all the men will sit down here. We had this long table. And afterwards, on the way home, I asked my wife, so what'd you guys talk about? And like, oh, well, so-and-so's having a baby, and, and their little boys do it at the same time as somebody else, and they're both naming him Patrick, and it's like all this stuff. And I was like, wow, that sounds terrible. What a boring conversation. I just thought that was the word. We were over here talking about, like,
The just war theory, I
right,
think.
yeah, exactly, and like all these different political things, it's just so funny that women, they're like inward, they can't help it. And us guys, we're talking about the world and the things out there, and it's just the way we are.
But who we surround ourselves with is ultimately what our conversation, how we act, and we're ordered towards. I think of St. Augustine. I love St. Augustine, and in his Confessions, he talks about whenever he was young, at 12 years old or so, he was surrounded by a bunch of his, what he called friends, and they saw this pear tree in the neighbor's yard. Now, these pears were not very good. They did not look very good. Augustine and his friends weren't hungry, but yet they stole the pears. They stole the pears for the excitement of doing the evil, of the pure excitement. And he talks about how if he wasn't with those people, if he wasn't with his friends, he may not have done that. Now, if you fast forward another 20, 25 years, when St. Augustine has his conversion, he says two things. He says he has to pray unceasingly, and he has to, I want to make sure I said this right, unceasing effort to change his habits. Those are the two things he says, because he realizes that he has to change who he is on the inside and develop this prayer life and this communion with God. And then he also has these deep-rooted sins that he can't break on his own. We're made for communion with God, and we're made with communion for each other. So he knew he had to have St. Ambrose with him. He had to have his other friends to make sure that he was constantly trying to break these bad habits and develop a virtue.
Right, so I think this is such a good contrast. You have St. Ambrose surrounding himself with
Augustine.
I'm sorry, thank you. St. Augustine surrounding himself with a bad influence, bad friends, who lead him to do an evil act. Okay, then years later, he's now surrounding himself with good friends like St. Ambrose, who are leading him towards what? God. Okay, so this is the difference. This is why we must be selective. Because I've heard it said that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I think that's true. And this is a very good example. Where, as I said, oriented outward, men have an outward orientation. Everything about us, the way we're called in our vocation to service, even in the marital embrace, everything about a man is made to give himself away. Okay? And because of that, it's, I think, more difficult for us to create deep connections than it is for women. As we mentioned, they just are receivers, and they will just get in a room and jab, and they'll get to know each other in a much easier way. So we have to make it a priority. We have to even put it on the calendar, or we have to do it on purpose. We have to be intentional about the relationships that we do establish and the friendships that we maintain.
Yeah, it's interesting, though, if you think about it, well, why would God create us that way? Why would God create us to where we need each other? I mean, he could have just made us where it was just him and us. We didn't need everybody. Like, I didn't have to stand this close to Dave. It could just be God and I.
Right. Yeah, because he could have made us however he wanted. He could have made us totally different, but he didn't. He made us so that we have this deep need for each other. We're not satisfied unless we're in communion with one another. And I think that the answer to that question lies in what we see in all of God's creation. Everything about the natural world is a sign that points to a heavenly truth or a heavenly reality. Okay, and this truth about our nature, that we're made for one another, points to what I think is a very important heavenly truth about our destiny. Okay? We know that we're made in God's image. God is a communion. He's a Trinity. There's three of them, and they are in communion with each other. Okay? Because we're made in his image, we too are made for communion. And it is heavenly destiny that in heaven we will be in communion with the communion of the divine persons. And that is why friendship is so crucial to this life. Because we're made for it. We need it. And so we have to, once again, choose very well who it is that we're being in communion with.
Because the friendships that we have here on earth prepares us for the friendship that we will have with God in heaven. It's this natural progression of the friendships that we have here on earth prepares us for the communion, the body that we are going to have there in heaven.
Right. So for us, especially as Catholics, if a friendship does not have Christ at its center, then it is not an authentic relation. It's not an authentic friendship. If friendship is supposed to be preparing us for friendship with God, with Jesus, then if Jesus isn't at the center of that friendship, it's not preparing you to be in friendship with Jesus. Okay, it's going to be preparing you for something, but it's not that. Every relationship is going to lead us towards something. And so if it's not Christ, then it is not serving you well. The thing about friendship is that it has a way of making us more like the other person. Okay, so Adam and I's friendship has a way of making me more like him. And he and I have a way of making him more like myself, which is hilarious.
I used to not say dumb jokes, and I hung out with him for 28 years.
Yeah.
And
my wife does the same thing. Like, she'll make these dumb jokes, and this kind of the thing that I would say, and I know she used to never do any of that stuff. I mean, she would make much better jokes before we got married. But I have a way of making her more like me, and praise God, she is making me more like her. And that's what friendship does. And so it's very important to get it right.
yes, because understanding human friendship enhances our understanding of our friendship with God. If you take John 15, for example, right before Jesus goes through the Passion, right before the Last Supper, he sits down with his apostles and says, I no longer call you servants, but friends. Everything that God has told me and revealed to me, I have revealed and told to you. And so Jesus gives us this example of, like, in order to have this authentic friendship, you have to open yourself up. You have to give yourself to the other person for their sake. It has to be a complete act of service for the other person. Everything that you have, and I think that's very hard for guys. It's hard to be vulnerable. It's hard to open up and share your life with other men because there's not a lot of atmospheres that allow that to happen. But I think that we got to change that, and I think that you have to be able to intentionally make that an opportunity, because ultimately we all have to share our lives with one another.
Yeah, I think that passage from John is very powerful, because it's one thing for two of us to have a friendship and to share our life with each other. But when the God-man says that to you, that now he is sharing his life with yours, and he is now saying, I'm making you more like me. Friendship with Christ has a way of beginning the process of theosis, of making us like God. In heaven, we will become like him. And it blows my mind. I almost don't even know what that means, but I know it's beautiful, and I love it. That he would offer himself to someone like us. Who are we to him that he would love us so much, but he does. And he offers that friendship to all of us.
Right, so I think you have to think about the friendships that you have. Are they leading you towards virtue, or are they leading you towards vice? Those are the two. Either it's virtue or it's vice. And I think it's either like the young St. Augustine or the older St. Augustine.
Mm-hmm. Because ultimately, friends don't let friends sin. Okay? They don't let friends sin. And so these friends, they're going to be leading you somewhere. And I know, thinking back to my own experience, after college, started taking my faith more seriously, and I had a lot of friends that at some point I realized, I really just shouldn't be hanging out with you. You're just not a good influence on me. And I didn't say that to them because
That would be rude.
I didn't want to hurt their it would be. I would hurt their feelings, and I didn't. It's not
Luckily,
like,
he didn't say, it wasn't me. This isn't about me. I'm just letting guys know.
Right, that's true. But I didn't. It's not like I'm not friends with them anymore, but they're just not part of my inner circle like they used to be. And we don't spend a whole lot of time together. And, friendships come and go. That happens. But that was a really, really hard decision. Just because I really cared about these. I mean, these were some of my really close friends that I had to make the decision to just not spend very much time with because they had a negative effect on me. It wasn't leading me towards the place that I had come to desire.
Right. I think Dr. John Cuddeback, if you guys have been here, he's been here before talking about friendship. In his book, True Friendship, which I highly recommend, I think it's a great book, he says in there, to attempt to have friendship in the absence of virtue is self-defeating. I'm going to read that again. To attempt to have friendship in the absence of virtue is self-defeating.
Yeah, this is one of the things that Aristotle actually came to the conclusion of. It's just amazing how he was able to come to all of these deep truths. When you read his stuff, it's like, was this guy Catholic? But he was just a pagan. I mean, he didn't know anything about Christ or divine revelation. But he says that there are a lot of people who think they have good relationships, that they have these good friendships. But in reality, they don't, because they themselves do not pursue virtue, and so they're actually incapable of what he calls authentic friendship. Or the person that they have a friendship with isn't pursuing virtue. And so there's no way that they will ever arrive at what he calls authentic friendship. So if both parties are not pursuing virtue together, then the friendship is not authentic. Because if you don't have charity, then you're never going to will the good of the other person for their own sake. It will always be somewhat self-interested. And he says that virtue is its own reward. To pursue and to have virtue is its own reward. And what does he mean by that? Well, I want to use just a couple philosophical terms. We're not philosophers at all, so this is not going to be hard.
We don't even play one on a radio.
Right, yeah. Sometimes I like to pretend I am one, but I'm not. The idea that nature, everything has a nature and an end. Okay, so the nature, let's just say an apple tree. An apple tree's nature is that it has a certain type of bark, it's this shape, the leaves are a certain kind and size, and everything about the tree, when you look at one apple tree, you can say, oh, that's an apple tree, that's an apple tree, that's an apple tree. They all kind of look the same. It's because they all have the same nature. It is the nature that gives them these outward accidents, the appearance. And everything about an apple tree's nature works towards the end. It's designed for the end, which the end of the apple tree is to produce apples. That's what it's for. So once you know the end of a thing, the purpose of it, now you can say whether something is good or bad for that thing. So if an apple tree is supposed to be making apples, then I can now say that water and sunshine are good for the apple tree because they promote the end. They help it in making the apples.
And like tree killer and an axe would be bad.
Yeah. An axe would be very bad for an apple tree, or like a big fire. That would not help a tree make the apples. Okay, and so now what Aristotle said about man, even he admitted, he came to the conclusion that man is not simply a material being. We're not just animals, that we don't only need food, water, and shelter, but that we have a spiritual component to us that also needs to be nourished and satisfied. And I don't know how, that would be so hard for me to come to that conclusion. I think if I was Aristotle, I would have said, all right, well, the end of man seems to be ice cream and cookies and beer. That is what makes me happy. If I was just totally on my own, I'm just not as smart as that. But he said that the end of man is virtue. That's what he said we're made for. And I think that from his perspective, he really got it quite right, that we are made for virtue. We're made to have these perfections of certain disciplines and power because they make us more like Christ. He didn't know that, but the more virtuous we become, the more Christ-like we become. And so that is really the purpose. That's our purpose. And so now we can say whether a friendship is good or bad for us because, like as we've said, is it advancing me in virtue or is it promoting me in vice?
So I think this last little part of our talk, we'll use the model that St. Augustine used on his two, of praying unceasingly and making sure to surround yourself with good people and how to pragmatically do that. Like Dave said, growing in virtue interiorly has to be a number one. Because ultimately, you can't give what you don't have. So if you're not a virtuous man, you can't give that virtue to the other man. And vice versa. You can't have authentic friendship if you're not living a virtuous life. So I think a couple ways we can do this are several things. One, obviously, exactly what St. Augustine says, prayer. We have to be intentional men of prayer. We have to have a morning prayer. We have to have an evening prayer. I think that the reason why we all can get together and have a meal together, and right before we eat, we say prayers, because we make sure that we have prayer right before things that we are already doing. We're going to be eating anyway, so let's bless the food ahead of time. So I think it's important for guys, especially, and I'm talking more about myself here, is that I have to make sure that I put on the calendar when to pray. Because if I don't, I'll get through the whole day and realize, oh man, I only said my morning prayers, and it's 7 p.m. So I think, one, the Liturgy of the Hours is a great way. The church has given us the beautiful prayers, the Liturgy of the Hours, and it gives us specific times to pray, what to pray, and when to pray them.
Yeah, that's really the key. If you just say, I think I'm going to pray more, you're not going to pray more.
I've tried it, at least. I can't.
You might pray more like today or tomorrow, but you can't just say, I'm going to start praying more. It doesn't work that way. At least it doesn't for me. So if your prayer life is not where you think it should be, or if it's not every day, if it's not consistent, you need to make it so. So you need to sit down with yourself, write it down. Say, this is what I'm going to pray and when. When am I going to pray? What am I going to pray? And don't just say, I'm going to pray in the morning and I'm going to pray in the evening. No, what prayers are you going to say? I know for myself, I have morning prayers I say every day. I have evening prayers I say every day. I say a rosary in the middle, and I make sure to also pray with my wife every day. Mm-hmm. So prayer, you are not going to grow in holiness if you do not have a good prayer life. It is the nourishment of all of the spiritual life. If you're not praying, you're dying spiritually. So we must have a good prayer life.
I think putting it on the calendar is one way. Another way for me that I was able to do that's helped me is setting alarms on my phone. At 3 p.m. every day, my phone goes off to remind me that Jesus Christ died for me at this very moment. And to stop what I'm doing, stop the emails, stop the phone calls, stop the conferences, and just take a minute to pray, if I can, to pray the divine mercy, or at least acknowledge that Christ died for me at 3 p.m. right now.
Yeah.
Those are easy ways to help with the prayer life.
The next thing is doing a daily examination of conscience. And this is something that I'm not always good at. There are times at the end of the day where I'm just so tired, I either totally forget about it or just say like, oh, I did pretty good. Okay, I'm going to go to sleep. And that's just a weakness on my own part. A couple years, two Lent seasons ago, I wanted to try to get better at this, and so I actually, for Lent, I was doing 2 examinations every day. I did one at lunch and then one at the end of the day. And the one at lunch, actually, I found to be the most beneficial because it was the middle of the day, and I'd say, oh, this is the things I've not been doing well. And it's still the day, I can change it right now. I don't have to wait till tomorrow, like at the end of the day. So really, that one was very, very helpful because whether it's something I'm not doing at work or something I said to somebody, maybe at the office, I can go apologize right now. I could take action. So that was a really good strategy for me. But if you're not doing that daily examination, then you're just totally blind to all of the things where you need help. There was a certain point in my own life where I kind of stopped committing the mortal sins that I had been committing my entire life. And I thought, like, wow, I'm pretty holy now. That's pretty good. I did it. They're like, behold the man, here I am. Like, look at me. And then I slowly made very slow progress, and I realized, oh, actually, I suck. Like, I'm terrible at a lot of stuff. I'm, not nearly.
All you got to do is pick up the phone and call me.
Right,
I could have told him that.
And so the examination is what's going to help bring those things up to you, because we're blind to our own sin, which is why also the next thing, if you would like to grow in virtue, is you should get a spiritual director. Spiritual directors are hard to come by these days. I know in the Tulsa diocese, we don't have as many priests as we really need. So it's difficult to find a priest who has time to take you on as a directee. But if you're serious, if you really are serious about growing in holiness, you need an advisor, spiritual director, someone who can walk you through the spiritual life, who can say this is where you need improvement, because I said you're blind to your own sin, and so you need someone who is wise to counsel you in what to do next. Sometimes you even know, this is my problem, but I just don't know what to do about it, okay? So get a spiritual director. It doesn't have to be a priest, but man, it really is so much better if you can find a holy priest who will guide you.
The next thing is a regular confessor. And I know that's a tough one, because I'm sure you guys haven't done this before. I'm sure you guys haven't, but I know that I have gone into the confession before and try to change my voice a little bit. Maybe Father doesn't know who I am, or maybe I'll go to this priest over here on January, this one over here in February, this one over here in March, and by the time I make it back around in January, he won't remember what the sins I had, because it's been a year, so maybe he won't remember. It's so important to have a regular confessor, because he knows where you are in your state in life. I can walk in, and the priest knows that Adam is married, he has kids, he knows my strengths, he knows my weaknesses. That way he's able to give me the counsel and the penance that's needed to help me grow in my spiritual life.
Right, yeah, especially we really underestimate penance in our own lives. Historically, penance used to be about 1 million times worse. It would be like...
Mathematically, is that accurate?
Right, yeah, it's about 1 million, 1.5 million.
Okay.
It'd be things like standing outside the church for a year or two as everybody came in every Sunday, and every person who walked by, you had to ask them to pray for you. Please pray for me, I'm a sinner. Please pray for me, I'm a sinner. Please, for a year. Okay, and we complain about, I got a whole decade of the rosary. Okay, but a good confessor who knows you, especially who knows what you struggle with, can give you a penance appropriate to what you need, okay? Maybe you need to sacrifice. Maybe you need a little bit of suffering in one area to help you get over whatever it is. So having a regular confessor. Also, if you can grow in humility and be more like me.
Father, confessions after this? Is that good? All right, good.
But really, it's tough. I get embarrassed too when I go in and say the same things. Like, yeah, no, I still am terrible at that one thing, and but it's so good for you. It's so good for you.
So now that we've looked at a few things that you can do internally, let's talk a little bit about how to help externally. Before we talk about that, also, if you're thinking like, okay, I'm with you here, but how do I find these friends? How do I get this authentic friendship? The homily today in Mass says that Mary always brings us to Christ. So I strongly encourage you men to be praying to our mother to put holy men in your life that you could become friends with. Because she wants you to be friends with holy men, because it's going to point you towards and them towards Christ. So if you don't have this, the first and foremost thing when you're upping your prayer game is to pray to our mother to put holy men, virtuous men in your life. There's a couple other things that Dave and I have done over the past about 8 years. We've started different men's groups. We've realized that the men's ministry needs to be upped. We need to get together more. Iron sharpens iron, right? I mean, we need each other. So for the last about 8 years or so, Dave and I have tweaked and changed and done the right things and done the wrong things on how to do different men's groups. And when we say men's groups, there's a lot of different meanings to men's groups. We're not talking about, when we talk about men's groups here, we're not talking about the men's groups at the parish or these big conglomerate men's groups. These are good, and I think you should go there. But those aren't the ones that we're talking about in this scenario.
Right, yeah, just because once again, we're talking about big groups of people, and you just can't share yourself with that many people, okay? And so I think that we have really discovered the secret sauce to creating just like the most awesome men's group. We're in 2 of them. We have 2 monthly men's groups that we go to, and both of them are relatively small. The first one is called Spirits and Smokes, okay? So we discuss men's spirituality. We talk about like what's it like, the struggles as a father, or just this, everything in the life of a man, and how is our relationship with God, just stuff. Okay, but we drink whiskey and we smoke cigars while we do it, okay? The other one is completely different, and it's called Pipes and Pints, because we drink beer and we smoke pipes, so
They're obviously different. They're obviously different groups.
Right. It's like, I don't understand why my wife thinks they're the same thing, but that group is a little bit different because Spirit and Smokes, the first one, it's a closed group. There's about 10 of us, which is really, that's as many as you would really want to have in a group. You don't want more than that, just because you end up having side conversations that start to take place. And most of the time, not all 10 guys are there. But Spirit and Smokes is more of an open group that anybody can invite people to. And it's recently got up to like 20 guys, and so we're trying to figure out how to divide it. And one of the things I will just tell you is that it's difficult to divide a group because people think it's a failure. We can't. It's like they're breaking up the band or something. And it's like, no, this is good. We have found something that is attracting more and more men. And so we need to divide. The goal of a men's ministry should be always to have a group that's growing so fast, you have to keep splitting it off. Like, that would be so awesome if you could find something so attractive for men that was reaching what they need. So if you are in a group that is growing, do not view dividing the group, subgrouping, if you will, as a failure. That's really a victory, because you need to have your group small so that you can really have a good discussion and share with everybody. There's always going to be people in a group who are quiet, who are shy. And if the group is too big, then the only people who talk are the ones like me who feel like they have a lot to say, okay? And when nobody else is talking, it's like, well, I'll tell you something. I got, this is brilliant what I have to say for you over here. So you need a small group so that everybody can really open up. So it's not intimidating.
One of the other ones that we've done is a weekly group. And now so we've kind of gone from bigger to smaller groups. And the smaller the group, the more frequent I think you guys should meet. This group that I'm about to talk about is we call it our IHOP group. We meet in the mornings at IHOP every Tuesday. And it's Dave and myself, Juan Posada, who's here with us this afternoon, and another guy. And for the last 7 to 8 years, we've read Theology of the Body by JP2. We're going through the Catechism right now. And so what we do is we get together before work. We have our coffee. We break open. We have prayer together. And then we break open something that we can learn about our faith together. And again, because there's only 4 people, it's a very intimate, real conversation.
Yeah. So for us, these 4 of us, this is like our inner circle. They're the people that we really share our lives with. And those are the people that you want to, as we've said, those are the people you should invest your time in, okay? And in our group, all 4 of us are serious about growing our lives, growing our spiritual lives, becoming better men. And my wife has even told me out loud that she feels like I'm a better husband when I come back from one of these men's groups.
Which is shocking.
That she would just, notice this, in the 30 minutes, because, it's usually late when I come back. And so it's not like we spend time, it's not like I'm running over and doing the dishes or anything. I don't know what it is, but she has told me that I feel like you're a better man, you're a better husband for me after you've come back from one of these groups. And so I know that it's important. If it's important to my wife, it's got to be important because she's brilliant. She knows everything. Don't tell her I said that.
It is recorded. She'll hear this.
Oh, yeah. I forgot.
To close, though, guys, the world needs virtuous men. We have to be virtuous men. The world needs us. We have to have authentic friendship. We need to do it together. The whole existence of humankind, men have done everything together in service. And the devil is so good at dividing and conquering. That is his game. And we cannot let that happen. We have to grow in holiness together. We have to grow in holiness individually. Because St. Thomas Aquinas said, there's nothing on this earth more prized than true friendship. So when you find your true friends, you fight for them for everything you got. Because there's nothing in this earth more prized than true friendship. Especially when it's rooted in Jesus Christ, our Savior. If you guys have any questions about how to continue forming men's groups, we have free brochures and everything at our table. We'd love to talk to anybody about this. If we have questions or anything like that, we can, or I'll leave it to Father Bachansky. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much. And we do have a few minutes for questions. And actually, I'd like to start out with one. So, in terms of, like, you guys have been friends since, you're old enough to think about having friends, right? Mm-hmm. But in terms of, like, if a person is, somebody's sitting here thinking, this is awesome, this is what I need, this is going to, boost my spiritual life, but I don't know, like, where to start. Like, how do I just walk up to somebody? You're not going to walk up to somebody and say, can you be my friend?
Right. It's weird how that worked in kindergarten,
Yeah.
but it doesn't translate to today.
And I mean, especially if it's like, well, all the people around me that I think I'd like to be friends with, or that they have things about them that I admire, well, I'm not like that. Maybe I'm not as confident as these guys, or I don't feel like I measure up, or I don't have the same interests, or like they're all talking about this, and it's not what I know anything about, or sometimes just shame because we're struggling with bad habits or whatever. Like, so in the sense of being vulnerable, like what do you suggest in terms of finding the hope and the courage to kind of step out and try and form friendships?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I would say look for people that you have common interests with. Whatever it is, like, do you have a hobby? Look for somebody else who enjoys that hobby, because friendship always comes down to a shared common experience. So if you have nothing in common with somebody else, like, there are just some people that you meet where you don't know why, but you hit it off really, really well. And then other people you meet that are really great and nice people, but you just don't even know what to say to them. Like, you just struggle to keep the conversation going, and it's just not working. Look for people, like, I like to sail, so maybe that would be something I could find somebody who was also liked to go sailing. Mm-hmm. Or, I like to smoke cigars and drink whiskey, apparently. So, that worked really well for us. That seems to be a good one. If you like to do that, you should have no lack of friends. But I would say just think about what your passions are and find somebody else who will share that with you, because that will be really key in having a shared life, that you would have those same common interests.
Yeah, and I would add that we talked about the men's groups, that we were talking about the smaller ones, but I mentioned at the beginning the men's groups at the parishes, the Knights of Columbus. Those are very important because those are already kind of rooted in Jesus Christ. The foundation's already there. You know that this man's also he's sacrificing his time, his evening, to be at this Knights of Columbus meeting, to be at this men's groups meeting. Those are the type of people that, I know this is weird, but if you ask somebody to just come over and share a meal, there's something about sharing a meal that you actually learn a lot about somebody. And so don't have an agenda at the beginning. Just, hey, you want to come over and have a meal? Don't ask them to bring anything. and just open your doors in hospitality.
Yeah.
I think that helps out a lot.
I would also say, just two more things, Curcio and Acts. I don't know if you guys have those ministries here, but if you have Curcio seems like it's most places. If you haven't lived a Curcio retreat, I would highly recommend that because the retreat itself is designed to get people into small groups. Okay, so do something like that. We have Acts in our diocese as well. There are a lot of these programs going around that help people form these small groups. Go on one of these retreats, and that you'll meet a bunch of other guys who are also probably interested in growing in virtue, who also will be wanting to meet in a small group.
And I'll just say, if you go to Curcio or Acts, be prepared. At least for me, this has been my experience, my dad's experience, a lot of the men that I talked to. The week before Curcio is going to be tough. Everything seems like everything's going to go wrong.
That's true.
Your work's going to go wrong. You're going to be short-tempered. It's the devil's good at dividing and conquering.
Yeah. Your car will break down.
And he doesn't want you to get together with these men. So just be prepared for that to happen and go anyway.
These small groups that you have, the smokes ones,
Yes.
other ones, are they all Catholic or do you have non-Catholics? How do you
So that's a
divide
great,
people there?
yeah, that's a great question. The question was Catholics and non-Catholics in these small men's groups. Dave, do you want to take this one? Or you want me to?
Okay, well,
Because we've had this question.
yeah. So one of them is all Catholic, and one of them is almost all Catholic. But I think that if you're saying, all right, I would like to get involved here. I mean, I need some men around me. Your priority should be on other Catholic men. And then once I think you have a good group around you, then you can maybe start investing your time in more of an ecumenical group. It's not that, oh, hey, he's not Catholic, don't let him in. But I think the group should be Catholic because it needs to be formed around the truth. And that is important because if you start spending your time debating apologetics, then you're not actually opening up to sharing your life. Apologetics are important to discuss, and we want to evangelize. But once again, you cannot give what you do not have, and if you do not have brothers at your side, then you're going to lose the battle. So that, I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
I wasn't sure from your talk as if these were all Catholic
Yeah.
or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good question.
That's a good question. All right, so we've exhausted the topic of friendship.
Yes.
Oh,
Jim, so they always say that you're never supposed to go into business with your best friend.
he's
Yeah.
my financial advisor. Can you believe that?
Have you discovered any, has it revealed any deficiencies or
So
things that
many.
annoy you?
Oh, so many, Jim. He is hard to work with, I will tell you.
No, it's actually grown for us.
Yeah.
It's helped us because again, we actually have to meet every week now because of our show, and we have to talk basically on a daily basis about the radio station. So it actually has grown our friendship.
But it has been hard. I mean, there have
Oh
been,
yeah, there's been he definitely annoys me, and I definitely annoy him in certain aspects.
Yes.
Did you take your cigars and whiskey for today evening?
Do I have any for this evening?
Bring cigars for tonight's session.
I'm not sure if that's allowed or not, but the answer is yes.
Be a man!
Yes, sir.
The question is about making that transition from, the weather and sports teams or whatever, to like
Real.
substantive stuff, and how to do that and not make it weird.
Here's the question. This is the question that needs to be asked not only of our good friends, but of people that like, oh, he's a fellow Catholic of mine. How's your prayer life? Has nothing to do with the weather. People don't ask that question. I wish, Father, you're still here. Father John, I think, was it you I got this from? Do you do this?
It's Father John and Deacon Lamar in Tulsa.
Okay,
Ask us this.
ask someone, how's your prayer life? Because that's an important thing. Nobody talks about that. It's almost a weird question to ask somebody, But if you do it, you're just like, hey, I really want to know, how is your prayer life?
And even like gear it towards like, I'm trying to learn. Like, what are you doing? Because I may be able to pick that up.
Right, and I care about you. Really, this is a very personal question, because it goes to the heart of, how are you fulfilling your vocation? You're made for God. Are you praying? I mean, it's deeply personal, but it's one that people seem to be okay with talking about, as long as as long as there's mutual agreement. Like if it's one Catholic to another Catholic, if we know each other, then that seems to be a good question to start the conversation. Also, there's a lot of good books, good resources out there for men's groups. One we went through is called Fuel.
We have on our brochure that we have out there, it gives a suggested reading material and our do's and don'ts. I think we have like 7 of each, because we figured out don't do this because no one likes it, and this worked for us.
Yeah.
One kind of being, don't make sure that one guy is the ringleader and just talking the whole time. Men sit in business meetings all day long. I don't want to give up my evening to go and listen to another man all night long. It needs to be a conversation. We got to open ourselves up. The goal of these groups are to cultivate an authentic friendship, to open ourselves up. So when you start asking these intimate questions, you naturally are going to open yourself up, and it provides an atmosphere of actual dialogue and not, I'm now giving a lecture.
Right. And
Everybody
I think
listen.
if you just spend enough time with somebody, eventually you won't ask, how's the weather? I mean, that could just be a function of you need to just get to know each other a little bit better and have a deeper knowledge of one another, yeah.
A lot of church guys, they might be comfortable with becoming friends with other guys in the group, but to break out of that kind of same-sex environment where we all have the same experience, and so they understand each other, and so it's easy to talk about common experiences.
Mm-hmm.
But when you like, show tunes and Chardonnay, and someone else likes pipe and whiskey, that's a harder thing.
No, sure. No, that's a great point.
I think that sometimes, I think part of the problem is that we don't realize how common we are as human beings,
Mm.
and that sometimes people are afraid to share with someone because to be vulnerable is to tell someone, well, if they have same-sex attraction, well, the other guy might not know how to handle that or deal with that or whatever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yet at the same time, it's also surprising how few people really would not be your friend. How would you talk to someone who might be afraid to reach outside that SSA bubble into the parish life so that they really can have good, healthy male friendships and just be a regular guy without worrying about all those issues?
Yeah. I think that we are, the culture is so sexualized. Really, our sexuality is not the most interesting thing about us. Actually, that's one of the least interesting things about you, is who you're attracted to. Who cares? And honestly, I like show tunes. I do.
He sings.
I do. One of my college roommates was a music theater major, and so it's like, I know a lot of show tunes, but we can talk about that too. But that's tough. I think a lot of it just comes. You have to just get to know people. You don't have to be in this great hurry to hurry. I have to I just met you. Let's be authentic friends tomorrow. It's let's just get to let's. What do you have in common? Do you both like to play golf? Do you both like to do whatever? Just do those things, just for the sake of doing those things.
Mm-hmm. And part of that whole, the first part of that, like the show tune Chardonnay or the pipes.
That would be a great name for a group, though. Show tunes and Chardonnay. It's
that is a great group. But it's about cultivating this holy leisure. It's about enjoying each other's presence for the sake of the presence of the men around you. And I have sins that aren't that aren't great, that are very, I'm not proud of them. I'm ashamed of them as well.
Tell us.
Bless me, Father, Christ. No. But I mean, so we all have, the hand can't say to the foot, I have no need for you. I need you.
Yeah.
As a brother, I need you to be a part of it because I'm not growing in holiness until unless you're growing in holiness. We're all together in this. So I think that as men, if you are part of the SSA, you got to reach out. Daniel Mattson is a friend of ours who said he does a really good job of trying to reach out and reach out to people, to try to be their friend. But as married men, Daniel also told us, hey, you gotta open your doors, to people, be hospitable, invite people. So if you're ever in Tulsa, man, give me a call. My number is 918-360. No, but I'd love to have you over. So I think it's important that we all get together and knowing that we're all in a battle, and we gotta do it together.
Yeah.
We've got to leave it there, but thanks for.
Thank you.
Thank you.